matter. And that brings us to the nomination of Andrew Wheeler, who I've known for just about 20 years, and I know others here have known him for a long time as well. When Andrew Wheeler was named EPA Acting Administrator in July of last year, I sent him a letter. I think it was like the next day, urging him to heed the lessons of the past and restore the confidence of the American people in the agency's missions to protect our public health and our environment. I also cautioned Mr. Wheeler that the damage done by Scott Pruitt would not be easily undone. It brings me no joy to say today that he has not done what I hope he would do in a number of important respects. Not all respects, but a number of important respects. In fact, in many instances, Mr. Wheeler has gone further than his predecessor in his rejection of important measures that are supported by a broad list of environmentalists and industry. For example, Mr. Wheeler has decided to ignore the chorus of coal-fired utilities, public health, and religious leaders who've urged the Trump administration to keep the mercury and air toxic standards rule in place and effective. In fact, under Mr. Wheeler's leadership, BPA has issued an unnecessary proposal that undermines the legal foundation of MATS, which puts the entire rule in legal jeopardy. The proposal also requests comment on whether the standards should be rescinded altogether. In this MATS rollback proposal, EPA is willfully ignoring the actual benefits of reducing air toxics that permanently damage children's brains and cause cancer, and ignoring the fact that the compliance costs were a third of what were originally estimated. On another front, despite the repeated requests to negotiate a reasonable compromise on fuel economy and greenhouse gas tailpipe standards under Mr. Wheeler's lead, EPA is moving forward to finalize a proposal that all but freezes standards in place for the better part of a decade, and all but ensures that the auto industry spends the next half-dozen years or so embroiled in litigation with California and a dozen other states. Let me just say to my colleagues, when I was elected state treasurer of Delaware in 1976, I worked to save a Chrysler plant in Newark, Delaware. I worked for 30 years to save that plant. 4,000 people worked at that plant. I worked 30 years to save the GM plant that we had just outside of Wilmington, Delaware. For years, I have fought to try to make sure that our auto industry in this country is competitive with the rest of the world. With respect to fuel efficiency standards and a path forward, they are united in saying that they want a 50-state deal. And you've heard me say this many times. They want a 50-state deal. Andrew Wheeler sat here and said he wants a 50-state deal, too, with California at the table. The last thing the auto industry needs in this country to be successful and profitable is to spend the next half-dozen years or so in court, locked up with California and a bunch of other states. And while the rest of the world, the rest of automakers and the rest of the world move forward to producing and building the kind of vehicles that the world is going to be buying in the year 2030. So I'm very, very frustrated in this regard. This is a win-win situation where we can do good things for this planet by actually making sure that we don't somehow screw up the regulation that's in place for fuel efficiency standards, CAFE. We can preserve what is necessary. We give them some flexibility on the near term, the early years, and then to crank it up on the outer years when they're going to be building electric-powered vehicles and fuel cell-powered vehicles to beat the band, to compete with the rest of the world. And I'll just say, Mr. Chairman, I'll wrap it up with this. I want us to slow this down just a little bit. Mr. Wheeler has been nominated for this post. His nomination is good for 210 days. We're 183 days into that nomination. 183 days, or excuse me, we're 27 days into that nomination. There's 183 days to go. For God's sake, slow it down. If the idea of a rush to judgment, if we report him out, I think we'll report him out today, the idea of a rush to judgment to get him up on the floor, and before we have an opportunity to make sure that 5 of the issues, including the 2 I've just mentioned here, where we actually do good things for the planet, and we also provide for enhanced economic opportunity. Give us a chance to make sure that those are going to be locked in, and that's what my request would be. Thank you very much.